fracking increases 3.6% every year, doesn't that mean methane is going to increase 2, 3, 1% every year? How are we going to reduce this from 50% down 50% if we see fracking taking off? Plastics production will grow 40% by 2030. Cheered by Wall Street, US oil production will increase 46% by 2030. Chief economist of ConocoPhillips, Helen Curry, says US oil exports will increase 50%. So my question to Helen would be, Helen, what asylum are you living in? You're just saying that and people are cheering and people are investing, and where's the consciousness that needs to be here in this discussion? The United Nations says there will be a 150% increase in coal by 2030. Steel production will increase 60% by 2030. The American trucking industry foresees a 25% increase in trucking demand by 2030. Even though the average SUV gets only 22 miles a gallon, it is estimated by General Motors that sales of SUVs will double by 2030. So I thought we were supposed to cut it by 50% by 2030. That's what we were talking about. That's what Gary's government report is talking about. But there's another segment of society that is in complete denial about this and is cheering all these other developments, which we call growth and investment opportunities. And this is where our delusions reside presently. If we cut emissions 50%, that still only gives us a 50% chance of staying under 1.5 degrees of warming. China will export a dozen newly built coal-fired plants into Africa before 2030. Listen to this italicized sentence. Nearly equal in output to the entire coal power capacity of the European Union within the next 5 years. We can obviously see there's a tendency to go in this direction, and we are on the other end of that, trying to go in that direction. But this force that is pushing us towards greater and greater emissions is incredibly strong. Beef production will increase 37% in the next decade. Milk and cheese will increase 35% between now and 2030. Palm oil, which we didn't talk about much, will increase sixfold. Okay, I'm done. But we have more oil, more gas, more fracking, more steel, more coal, more trucking, more beef, more SUVs, more palm oil, more cheese, more dairy. Okay, nobody is listening. The average salary on Wall Street is $400,000 a year for those in the investment community. The party is not going to end anytime soon. And that's where we are right now in 2020, at this moment. So Greta visited the business community, and this is what she had to say.
Change. What's your message to world leaders today?
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences.
It's always hard. I've heard this many times, but I have difficulty listening to it each time because it just resonates. So Jane Fonda says, I beg people to ratchet up their action on climate. This is it, folks. This is the time. So in 2019, there were demonstrations all over this planet. 6 million people participated, and Greta was right up there raising their consciousness. Some of the largest demonstrations in the history of Canada, Quebec, other cities never had demonstrations that big. So scientists endorsed mass civil disobedience. I can't remember ever hearing 400 scientists recommending civil disobedience. I don't think that happened during the Vietnam War. Civil disobedience, says The Guardian, is the only way left to fight climate change. So activism is what we're required to do. Well, I had, at this point in my research and writing, I asked the question, is that all we have? Is that all we can do right now to create change? And I went to sleep, and it was like an archangel came to me with an idea. And I thought, where is this? I mean, this idea, the idea was this. It was like, declare a national emergency and invoke presidential emergency powers. And I thought, why didn't I ever think of that? I wonder who's thought about that. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I wrote to a professor of environmental science at Berkeley. And I said, I know of Trump, forget about Trump. But think about presidential emergency powers. Could they be a viable tool in dealing with climate change? And he said, yeah, let's forget about Trump. You're right. It is a viable tool, and you're not the only person who's thought about it. Go back to sleep. He didn't say go back to sleep. All right, so if you think about presidential emergency powers, this is something to pay attention to. For example, lobbyists pay $3.4 billion a year to try to seduce our representatives in Congress and in the Senate. The beef lobby, the oil and gas lobby, the fracking lobby, the dairy lobby, the cheese lobby, the auto lobby, the trucking lobby. Presidential emergency powers would make the president immune from this kind of force. A president could build wind and solar infrastructure much more easily using presidential emergency powers. That's how Roosevelt had General Motors make tanks. Do you remember T. Boone Pickens? He wanted to build a solar infrastructure across North Dakota and Oklahoma, but kept running into obstacles. States have requirements, cities have requirements, counties have requirements. You need permits. A presidential emergency declaration would clear the way for all of that. President of the United States has the power to ration supplies in an emergency. So we could ration beef, we could ration electricity, we could ration gasoline. And amazingly, the president has amazing powers when it comes to foreign trade. It was a complete revelation to me. Here, watch this. This is the Barbie ball. This is the Barbie doll problem. Barbie is made in China currently in a city which is fired by 6 coal-fired power plants. Okay, they burn coal and they make Barbie, and she's put in a box and put on a diesel truck. There are 10 million diesel trucks in China that burn a very, very dirty form of diesel fuel. Okay, and those trucks deliver Barbie to the port where she's put on a ship, which also pollutes the atmosphere. And she comes to the port of Oakland and is offloaded, or the port of Long Beach, and there she goes to Walmart or Macy's or Target. There's one Barbie doll sold for every 30 seconds in the United States. So the president of the United States could, I mean, how are you going to get China to stop burning coal? That's a major problem for any environmentalist. How do you do that? The president of the United States could say that if you do not convert your coal-fired power plants to natural gas or solar or clean energy, we will not import any of your products until you do. You've got 3 years, get down to business. So if you want to sell Barbie dolls to Walmart, you have to change your coal-fired power plants in that city. And this would be a very, very traumatic event for China, but it would be an incentive for China to stop burning coal. Okay, and the president has the power to require that. I can't imagine Trump doing this, but I could imagine a different kind of president exercising those powers. Declaring a national emergency was suggested by 3 people: Bernie Sanders, Tom Steyer, Michael Bloomberg. They were wise enough to say on the first day in office, that is exactly what they would do. Unfortunately, all 3 have disappeared. But at least the idea got there. Here's Tom Steyer.
I would declare a state of emergency on climate on day 1. I think we have to, because I think it is a state of emergency. We have to deal with it immediately, on a real-time basis, but also if we're...
So apart from that, I suppose that is just a fantasy, but we could say that climate catastrophe may evolve to a point where, regardless who is president, emergency powers will have to be declared to deal with the issues that we have to deal with in the course of the next few years. What can I do besides these ideas? Certainly to support aggressive political action and activism now is, I think, a rational conclusion from this effort. Secondly, our 2020 election is very important. Unfortunately, we do not have a candidate who is going to declare presidential emergency powers, so we're left just hoping that that might happen in the course of time. If we look at how much this costs, Joseph Biden says his plan is 1.7 trillion. Morgan Stanley estimates we need to spend 50 trillion by 2050. Bernie Sanders' plan was more reasonable, 16 trillion by 2030. The Green New Deal, no one can quite estimate what it is, could be as high as 36 trillion. In my scholarship, I wasn't looking at the United States. I was looking at global issues and looking at the global literature. And it looks like globally, 25 trillion over 10 years is what it would cost to solve this problem. That would be, America's share would be 1.28 annually. And it would also involve our cutting defense expenditures by 50%. So, in conclusion, if this is just window dressing and Biden is elected and he's going to have a $1.7 trillion plan over the course of 10 years, then the chances that we will hit 1.5 degrees of warming are enormous. The chances we will get to 2 degrees of warming and that tipping points will be breached is probable. Remember, if we reach 2 degrees of warming, 150 million people are expected to die. That's 3 World War IIs. And that could happen by 2036, 15 years, 16 years. That's how much time we have left. So beyond, I'm coming to a conclusion here, beyond hoping for presidential emergency powers and activism, what can I do personally? Well, here are some personal things I've gleaned from the literature, and I added a few of my own. Boycott Walmart, Target, Macy's, and made in China products. Not very popular these days. Change your car. You've got a few years, but you need to, if we're going to reduce transportation emissions by 50%, you need to change your car's emissions from getting 25 miles per gallon to 50 miles per gallon. So if you're driving a car that gets 25 miles per gallon, you need to get rid of that car. And that doesn't mean sell it, it means get rid of it. So e-bikes, ride sharing, travel by air, only 3,000 miles per year. That should be a standard. Reduce overall consumption, flush 3 times less per day, stop burning wood in your fireplace, recycle paper and aluminum, stop plastic production and pollution. 90% of those bottles end up in landfills. Cut your own personal dairy and beef consumption by 50% over the course of the next few years. Reduce your electricity consumption by 50% using LEDs. Contribute to Planned Parenthood. And if you have the money, put solar panels on your house. Charge your EV from the sun and install a Tesla Powerwall battery. That will significantly reduce your footprint. So I'm done. I would like to conclude by letting Greta conclude this talk. And she addressed the House of Representatives. So we'll take questions after this, but here's Greta giving the final concluding remarks to this talk.
Hi everyone, my name is Greta Thunberg. I am a 16-year-old climate activist from Sweden. I am grateful for being with you here in the USA, a nation that to many is the country of dreams. I also have a dream. I have a dream that people in power, as well as the media, start treating this crisis like the existential emergency it is. So then I could go home to my sister Beata and my dogs, because I miss them. In fact, I have many dreams. This is the year 2019. This is not the time and place for dreams. This is the time to wake up. This is the moment in history we need to be wide awake. And yet, wherever I go, I seem to be surrounded by fairy tales, business leaders, elected officials, all across the political spectrum, spending their time making up and telling bedtime stories that soothe us, that make us go back to sleep. These are feel-good stories about how we are going to fix everything, and how wonderful everything is going to be when we have solved everything. But it is time to face the reality, the facts, the science. And the science doesn't mainly speak of great opportunities to create the society we always wanted. It tells of unspoken human sufferings, which will get worse and worse the longer we delay action. Stop telling people that everything will be fine, when in fact, as it looks now, it won't be very fine. Some of you may have heard that we have 12 years as from January 1st, 2018 to cut our emissions of carbon dioxide in half. But I guess that hardly any of you have heard that is for a 50% chance of staying below the 1.5 degrees Celsius global temperature rise above pre-industrial levels. 50% chance. So a 50% chance, a statistical flip of a coin. Would any one of you step onto a plane if you knew it had a 50% chance of crashing? More to the point, would you put your children on that flight?
So thank you so much for your kind attention, and hopefully we'll have some questions.
Oh, thank you very much, Jerry. That was it was really outstanding. Maybe it was too outstanding. I study this topic a lot, and nevertheless,